Hey Mini Truckers, welcome back to Illicit Customs channel. On today's episode, we're preparing the front clip for installation. By doing so, there's a ton of sheet metal that needs to be removed in order to fit these big wheels. So why don't you come follow along and I'll show you how I do it so you can learn how to do it on your own project. Now in order to get my OBS laying full body on 26s with the front clip installed, I have to cut the fenders as well as the hood reinforcements. Now the first step is going to be install the core support and at least one fender so I can get an exact reference as to where I need a cut. But for now, I'll put a tape line on the back side of the fender so you can see what I need to do. If I put the fender on and I lay out the truck, I'm not going to be able to lay it all the way out. The tires will hit this part of the fender, which is why everything below this line needs to be cut out. Now when I do lay out the truck, the front tires are going to go negative camber. What that means is they're going to lean inward. The top of the tires will be further away from the fenders, closer to the engine. That's going to allow me more clearance up here, but at the same time, that's going to put the top of the tire closer to the hood because of the geometry. This is only a rough cut. When I actually go to install the tubs later on, I'm going to have to do another cut a lot higher. What that's going to allow me to do is put the tubs flush with the top of the fender. After all, I am running a 31.5 inch tall tire, so every square inch of real estate needs to be cut out to allow room for the tires. Now the reason I'm doing all of this to the front end before I even have doors installed onto the truck is this way, once the suicide doors are installed, every panel can be adjusted to each other. Between the doors, the fenders, and the hood, you need everything installed to get the proper adjustment and the proper fitment of the doors to the cab. Not only will you be adjusting everything, you'll also be helping to seal the doors to the cab. Because if you don't have the front end installed, you're going to eventually have a water leak or a wind noise or both from the doors. I've never installed suicide doors. I've never assisted in that. I'm going to have a local shop do that for me in the very near future. But in order to do his job properly, I have to do my job and install this front clip while having the front end cut up to fit the tires. So what do you think? Should we start cutting things up now? Let's do it. Now the truck is all the way up right now, and as you can see, I'm still tucking the lip of the rim. This is why I want to change the ball joints to uniballs. This will give me a lot more travel and allow me to clear the tires a little bit better. As you can see here, this is what I was referring to when I said the tires will touch the fenders. I can barely stick my hand in between, so if I drop the truck at all, it will come in contact and start messing up the fender as well as the tire and possibly the rim. So from here on out, the only way to clear it is to cut a line right here and remove all of this to get everything out of the way. Side note, when I take the fender off to cut on the inside, I'm gonna have to trim this lip as well. The reason for that is currently I'm all the way lifted and I'm all the way turned, and I can barely put a fingertip between the tire and the fender. I will be getting more turning radius because right now the tire is rubbing on the frame rail. So later on, I'm going to notch the frame rail to allow more turning radius. Combine that with my ride height being about right here, I will slice a tire down if I leave this lip, if I make any kind of a turn at all. So I'm going to cut from about here to about here. But when I cut it, I'm going to leave a little bit of a lip. The reason for that is when I actually tub it, I'm gonna put 1/4 inch round bar right here. That way I can weld it and it's a nice smooth transition on the inside, and it's a curve that's gonna rub on the tire instead of cutting a tire down. Now, as you saw from the time lapse, there's a ton of work to get this front end to fit. Being so low and having such a big rim and tire, you have to cut and cut and cut. As you saw, I fitted this fender on several times and cut it several times. The reason for that is you never want to cut one giant chunk because you're going to cut too much off and then you're going to cause issues down the road when you go to tub it, because at that point you're going to have to come back and backfill the hole you cut out. It's always best to creep up on it by cutting little by little by little. That's the best way I found out working in the collision repair industry, and that's the best way I found out that works for the customization as well. So I think it's time for a little close-up so I can show you exactly what I've cut, how much I've cut, and why I've cut it. So this is the original part of the fender that I removed when I first started trimming everything. As you can see here, I removed a lot more material, and I think you know why. It's obvious that these 26s are big and need as much space as possible to fit them. The real estate that was taken up by the fender needs to be taken up by the tire. So it's always best to cut as high as possible. This way you clear everything as much as possible. But you don't want to cut too much because you'll have harder work later on down the road, because now you're going to have to fill in everything because you cut too much off. Another reason you don't want to cut too much material off is because once you remove all of this, you're losing a lot of the structural integrity. All of the sheet metal that was here was keeping everything in its proper location and intact and structurally sound. With all of this gone, everything becomes flimsy again. So keep that in mind when you're building your project. I'm not too concerned at the moment because once I tub it, I'll be able to tie the inner skin to the outer skin by using the tubs. Doing so will add a ton of strength back into the fender and everything will be good just like new. This is how much of the underhood reinforcements that I had to cut out for clearance. And as you can see, it's not a small piece at all. Reason I cut so much serves two purposes. Not only will it give me enough room for the tires, but it's also going to give me enough space between each reinforcement to do a curved tub instead of doing flat sheet metal here and make it look like an afterthought that was pieced together. When I do the curved tub instead of the flat sheet metal, it's not only going to look better like it was designed that way from the manufacturer, but it's also going to add more strength into it. Because just like the fender, now that this is cut out, I lose a lot of structure in the hood. On the side lip, I also cut from here to here because it was coming in contact with the sidewall. Once I get all the sheet metal work done under here, I'm going to take this full section that I removed and I'm going to cut it up. This way, when I put it in place, it'll probably just be here and here. It can match the contour of whatever I do under here, and it would look a lot better versus just a square cut out of the side. Now that it's laid out, you can see just how high these tires come within the fenders. I have about an 1/8 inch height difference between the tire and the top of the fender. That'll leave just enough room for me to put my tubs and not rub on them when I lay it out. After 7 long years of having this truck torn apart and life getting in the way, I am finally happy to say I now have my front clip installed. I'm happy because that's one step closer to getting it back on the road. I'm finally making progress, and I want you to make progress as well. So get back in the garage and keep finishing that project. No matter what happens, do not let life get in the way. Until next time, keep on mini trucking and keep on building those dreams.